All right, y'all. We've got John Gorman on today, who I feel like is the jack of all trades when it comes to entrepreneurship and just like truly a freaking pioneer in the space. And I'm stoked to bring him on because we're going to dive deep into fitness coaching techniques, specifically rapid fat loss. And we haven't had anybody on the show talk about that, which I'm excited to hear more from him on that. I was fortunate enough to meet him. Well, I met you twice this year alone, which is kind of funny
Yeah.
from two different events. But I got to hear you speak on this topic in February in Nashville. But then I also heard him speak on his scale to seven figures in January. So we're going to definitely make this entrepreneur focused as well. But I mean, you've got your own supplement company, coaching company, you've written some books, like you've done all the things. So I'm going to have you kind of dive into just how you entered the space of online coaching. Oh, and also don't forget about your gym, all the things for you. So how'd you get into this space?
So interesting. I've been doing this for a while. My clients call me affectionately Old Man Gorman as their coach. So like I'm now known as Old Man Gorman, even though I'm 46. I guess that's still pretty old. So I've been doing this since 2007, where I started one-on-one training people out of an Anytime Fitness because I used to be a fat guy and I wanted to get into shape and I did Body for Life. And I'm the type of person to where, I'm really an entrepreneur is what I am. I see life through that lens and I love the sport of entrepreneurship. And so back in 2007, as I was transforming myself, I started to like put up before and after pictures in the gym as I was a trainer and it started to attract people and I was like, "Oh wow, like I can scale and I can do this." So I started bringing clients on and then I started managing a gym and personal training. And then I moved into the online space right around 2010, I left the gym and started coaching people online full time. And I remember that first year I made $60,000, which in Springfield, Missouri, which is Southwest Missouri, our cost of living so low here. Teachers make like 30 to 40 a year starting out. So like I was making like 35 a year or so running a gym and I was okay. I was comfortable. Grew up poor, so I didn't really care. But then I made 60 and I'm like, oh wow. And then the next year it was like 80 and then it was 100 and then I'm like, holy shit, like there's something to this. So that's just kind of a short version of how I got into it, but it was all based around changing my physique, trying to be in shape, trying to look like the people that I kind of idolized back in the day. And that's what got me started.
Yeah. It's nice to hear that scale and that slow and steady pace because we were just on your podcast talking about like
Hmm.
what everyone is looking at in the business coaching space and all these crazy promises and we all want to scale super fast and I totally preach the long game. And so it's nice to hear that you steadily were growing like 10, 20% for your first few years and you never gave up. You didn't go from 30 to 60 and think F this, like you kept going, which is what I love, right? And so I think that's important to hear. So, all right, diving into this rapid fat loss with diet breaks. I really loved your presentation. So I wanted to bring you on and chat about this, but I'm going to have you in a second kind of give me, who this is for, because what I want you all listening to kind of hear is like, all right, can I implement this into my current coaching skill set, right? And this is not about contest prep or any of that. I really want to make this just accessible to people that are working with Gen Pop, honestly, right? And so we're going to go over obviously rapid fat loss, muscle loss, diet breaks, implementation, right? All of those good things and probably some FAQs that you get. But can you tell me like how this came about? Like I'm sure you did some testing to figure out if this worked or not.
Yeah. So I test everything on myself, first of all. Every diet I've ever done, ketogenic diet, I did it first. I really mess shit up and I learned very well that way from my mistakes. So everything I've ever done, I'm the test subject, right? So rapid fat loss and diet breaks are two different things. Matter of fact, you just had Dr. Bill Campbell on your show, a good friend of mine. He's done research on both of
You're
those
good friends with
areas.
everyone, I swear.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, you collaborate, right? Like you do business with good people, and I love that.
Yeah, yeah.
So, Bill Campbell has done research on this. So what I like to do is I like to take research and I like to apply it to myself and to my clients, and I like to see how it works in the trenches. Okay. So essentially, we'll talk about the rapid fat loss part first. What that is that it's basically it's a way to crash diet. Now people hear that and they're like, "Oh my God, Gorman, how can you say crash diet?" And it's all these words pop up: unhealthy and unsafe and radical. It's not that, not in the fashion I'm about to talk to you about. So rapid fat loss is very good for People that have high enough body fat, which we'll get into the details soon, high enough body fat, it's not for people that are very shredded. It's not for people that are in prep. It's for people that have enough body fat to protect themselves against muscle loss that can come when you're really lean. But it's also a way to where you don't have to diet slow and steady and try and lose a pound of fat a week. There's a method you can use by drastically cutting your calories and imploring all these steps I'm going to go into detail on and get fat off in record time. So I'll just give you a couple examples to kind of do a prelude to this. Myself, I did it. I was weighing somewhere around 225, 227 pounds. I got all the way down to 205, and I did it with about 5 weeks of dieting with a diet break put in there in between, right? So like my calories were pretty low, but I use the diet breaks to help protect my metabolism, protect against muscle loss. And I was able to get that amount of weight off in about, with the diet breaks in there, about 6 to 8 weeks. So I went from 227 to like 205-ish. And I maintained that for a year, by the way. But in normal circumstances, I would have dieted a pound a week off, and that shit would have taken me 5 months. I don't have time for that. Like, I want it off now, right? But I don't want people hearing that thinking I'm promoting crash dieting. There's a system in place. And the people that can't do that are people that have already been dieting, right? Your calories can't already be low. So you need to be in a place to where you're eating enough. Hopefully you've reverse dieted and built your metabolism up, and you've spent time, whether you're in the off season as an athlete or you're just somebody that's dieted prior and now you've worked your calories back up and you've restored your metabolism. It also can't be for people that have hormone dysfunction. If you've got low test levels, if you've got your thyroid's out of whack, if you're chronically seeing elevated cortisol levels, all the different hormone dysfunctions that are out there, this isn't something for you. This is for a very healthy individual that's ready to cut. Maybe you have a wedding coming up and it's like, all right, I did a shotgun wedding. So like, we got to get ready now, but you're in a place where you're eating plenty of food. You want to drop from a size, 10 down to a 6, maybe. It's for situations like that that we can take advantage of it and do it in a somewhat healthy manner.
Now, before we dive into this, just to give a few, because I'm sure coaches are listening to this thinking, oh, I know exactly who I want to test this out on, right?
Right.
And how do you pre-qualify a client? So I know you just gave a ton of disclaimers, but in terms of
Right.
like their adherence, because a lot of coaches listening are coaching Gen Pop, and you obviously have to be adherent and consistent and on top of your diet, right? And so I think the
Right.
whole purpose is, yes, fast weight loss, but if you cannot stick to your macros just in general, I'm guessing you're not a candidate, right? So how would you go about even like implementing this or just ensuring that you're doing this in a way that's going to set the client up for success?
Yeah, so it's one of those things. If you do have a client base out there that they're not the most educated, right? They're not as great at counting their macros. Maybe they're just getting started. Or you have somebody that has issues with food and they're constantly cheating on the diet, right? And falling off the plan. The most important thing I've learned over the years as a coach is you can know all this wealth of knowledge. You can help someone so much just by communicating and making it specifically addressed to them and their situation. So if I had someone that wasn't as accurate as they could be, I'd be like, okay, and I'll use maybe Sally as an example. Be like, hey, Sally, here's the thing. We're going to do this approach. You're going to be able to get a lot of fat off of you really fast. I want on a scale 1 to 10, a 10 out of 10 is perfect. Like you're literally eating like a prep athlete, like your food's with you, all that stuff. I want you at a 9 out of 10 because the more accurate you're going to be sticking to your diet, the better results you're going to get. And we're going to try and get this off in record time. If you fall off the plan, if you're not prepping your food, if you're not doing the things I've asked of you, it's going to string this out. So I always have that talk with them. And if they have questions, I help them, whatever those questions are. Well, I'm having trouble, like I'm going over on my fats, for example. Well, you need to use some more low fat options, for your carbs or lower fat, don't use 80/20 burger, use 96/4 burger. Like there's things as a coach we should be able to reach out and help our clients with. So I make it specific to each person, but I'm very upfront with you're only going to get the results you're going to get if you drill down on this. And anyone, you can drill down on something for 4 to 6 to 8 weeks hard versus going 20 weeks, for example. So I kind of dangle that carrot and I'm not trying to manipulate them, but I'm letting them know like, hey, this is the deal. It's like business, right? You give all kinds of coaches all kinds of advice. Like, here's the things you need to do. If you don't stick to them, you're not going to fucking get the job done. Like, you're going to slow this process way down. You said on our podcast not long ago on Elite Physique University, it's the same thing. Business and diet coaching or physique enhancement, they are literally parallels to each other. They could be brother and sister. So that's the way I do it.
Last question before we dive into how to actually do this is, have you ever had to pull somebody because they just weren't sticking to it? Like, it's been 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or just like they're not sticking to it. They really need more of a slow, sustainable approach. No matter how much they want it, they're just not sticking to it. Or
So I did this with myself, and then I did it with 35 clients, and this would have been January of 2023. So like we're, a little over a year ago, I did this with 35 people, and I did it numerous times over the course of 2023. And I still use it for a mini cut here and there when it's applicable. I'd never had anyone quit on it. And the reason why is the diet breaks help. So after 2 weeks of dieting on lower calories, you're getting the diet break, and that really helps. And I explain that to them on the front end. I'd be like, hey, this is going to be 2 weeks. You're going to be pretty low calorie. You're training a lot. You're doing a lot of cardio. We're going to push, 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 but you're going to get a diet break in 3 weeks. You're going to be able to eat more food every day. We're going to cut your cardio out, and we'll get into those details. But I'm upfront. Now, if I didn't tell them any of that and they're like, oh my God, Gorman's hammering me with 1,200 calories, like over and over, when's the end? Of course, if they don't understand the process. So I do a good job of explaining that. So I haven't had to pull anyone off. But with any client that's having trouble sticking to a plan, coaches need to understand this. And this is from a business standpoint, they need to understand this. If your clients can't stick to the plan that you put together for them, you don't have to keep harping on them to stick to the plan. You as a coach may need to pivot and design a plan for them that they can adhere to. And by the way, if that involves tracking using their palm and their fist to measure protein and carbs, by all means, do that, because everyone's different. Find a plan that works for them. Don't try and force them to your plan.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, that's the whole reason. I mean, we would all be out of jobs if all of our clients were perfectly adherent. Like our job. And so
Right.
I know a lot of coaches are like, oh, but Sally won't do XYZ. It's like, okay, cool. How do we make it easier for Sally? Right. Like,
Exactly.
I agree. Modifications, because again, that's our job. Like, our job is to make it easier. Our job is to get you accountable. So if they're not sticking to the plan, well, sounds like we've got a coaching thing that we should, work on. But okay, let's dive into it. So we're setting somebody up for rapid fat loss. How are we designing this plan? And I know you're going to go into the diet breaks and all of that, but how are we designing the caloric kind of setup?
So the easiest way is, like I said, to make sure somebody's eating a lot. And I can use myself for an example, or any guy. Maybe you've got a guy, maybe Joe's eating 3,000 calories. He's training hard. He's trying to put muscle on. His body fat's getting a little high, and it's time to do a mini cut, right? Maybe he's been eating 3,000 calories for a year, and he's put on a little bit of excess body fat. It's just time to cut it up. And there's all kinds of different reasons to do something like this, by the way, to clear up insulin sensitivity. Just do a mini cut because you just aren't happy with how you're starting to look, right? Like, we all get to that point when you're trying to gain muscle. So if Joe's eating 3,000 calories, you're going to reduce those calories down by 40%. And a lot of people are like, oh, wow, that's a lot. But there's some key things to remember. So if you take, 3,000 calories, 40% of that's 1,600 calories. And that's the example that I like to use in my presentation. So now you've went from eating 3,000 all the way down to 1,600. And that sounds low, but remember, it's for a short amount of time. And the things you don't have to worry about. Now, if Joe were going to diet for 5 months, even 3 months on these calories, I would never start someone this low. But this is for a very short amount of time, because Joe's got enough body fat that he's going to use that body fat as fuel, and he's not going to tap into muscle. He's also been eating quite a bit. So 14 days at 1,600 calories is not going to crash someone's metabolism, right? They've got enough fat to use for fuel there, but you're also going to get to the point where about 2 weeks is what I found is right. And I've pushed this to 3 weeks of dieting before. And most people, their fat loss just really stalled out at 3 weeks. So I found the 2 week mark is perfect. Then you incorporate a diet break. But back to the macros, 1,600 calories. I like to make sure that you keep protein in there pretty good. Maybe he's eating, let's see what I use on my example. 1.25 times someone's lean mass is the easiest way to do it. So Joe's example would be 225 grams of protein. And then I like to keep their fats, somewhere around, 50 grams a day, somewhere in that range. And then the rest make up with carbs. So really what you're seeing at is if you look at this from a standpoint of a guy or a girl, your protein staying somewhere around where it should be in the off season, but take lean mass times 1.25. Keep your fat somewhere around 50, and the rest of your calories are going to be carbs, which is ideally you put those around your workout, before and after your workout. So a female might be eating 30 grams pre, 30 grams post of carbs, and that's it. And remember, this is hard, harsh, fast dieting. So it's going to be low. You can do it for 2 weeks. The thing is, if you had more, it's going to take you longer to drop. So that's the way I set it up, and that's why it's called rapid fat loss.
So how do we set up the diet breaks in a way that gets our clients to, of course, stick to it, right? Because they're going to be hungry. They're going to be super excited. Obviously, a diet break is not an excuse to go get McDonald's or whatever bullshit you want to do. So like, how do you set those parameters up for them?
So let's talk about hunger real quick, leading up to a diet break, because I want people to understand. Most people here, they think like 1,600 calories, or a female, their calories might be 1,200. They think, holy crap, I'm going to be starving. But if you're in a healthy state and your body fat's up there and it's time to do a mini cut anyway, the more body fat you have, the more your body secretes this hormone called leptin, which controls whether you get the signal to your brain that you're hungry. And leptin's primarily made in the fat cells. So when you're full-fledged off season or your body fat's at a decent level, when you eat, leptin is a signal that gets sent to your brain. It says, hey, I'm full, I'm satisfied. Well, it only really goes down when you get really, really lean. So if you think about somebody that's like me, like I was like 23% body fat, I was never hungry for those 2 weeks because I still had enough body fat producing that signal to my brain saying, hey, you're satisfied, you're full. It's once you really start to get beyond that 2 weeks is when people start to really feel hungry, or they get really, really lean and they start to feel hungry. So like I'm 205, like I said, now, if I did this, I would be pretty hungry because I'm already starting, I'm at a pretty lean body fat level. So I say that to let people know, don't worry about being hungry the first couple weeks. Don't worry about that. Even the second couple weeks of the rapid fat loss, you're probably not going to be that hungry. It's really kind of mind over matter and just get it done. But that sets us up to the point to where when you're low on carbs, you're low on energy, you may not feel great because now you've been in a deficit for 2 weeks. Now it's time for a diet break. And here's what I like to do. During the rapid fat loss, I've got people training like they normally would. Maybe it's 5 times a week in a healthy individual. They're doing cardio maybe 4 or 5 times a week at like 15 minutes a day. That's it. Just 15 minutes of cardio that we threw in there to help with fat loss. You do all that for 2 weeks. Maybe you've dropped, 8 pounds in 2 weeks is kind of like what a larger guy would drop, right? Maybe if you're a female, you've dropped 5 to 6 in 2 weeks. Diet break time. Now what I do is I pull all that cardio out, no cardio. So essentially it's a diet break, but it's also kind of like a deload. I still have them train like they normally would, drop all the cardio, but then I add 50 carbohydrates to their diet that they were doing every single day. So now if a female was eating 1,200 calories during the rapid fat loss, you add 50 carbs to that. Now that's 200 calories that she's adding right away. But she's also not burning the calories from the cardio that she was doing. So there's another 100 calories. So now she's basically her caloric intake is now up somewhere around 300. So now she's up to the 1,500 range. That's not all the way back up to where she may have been at 1,900, for example, or 2,000. But here's the magic that happens on the diet break. Cortisol drops, so thyroid hormone speeds back up. Your sleep's better. Your hunger cues aren't as high, and you feel better. But you're still somewhat at a deficit. I see people, they keep dropping really good weight on those diet break weeks, but they're also getting to eat 50 extra carbs. So now they have more energy than what they're used to. And they do that for a whole week. And it's a nice boost to your metabolism to not stay very low calorie. Now our calories are back up just to a quote unquote moderate range, but they're still dieting calories. But you see how that protects the metabolism. And that's worked really well. And I almost everybody that does it right and they track, like you said, they track their food, they're still dropping really, really well that week. Really well.
And I find that a lot of the gym pop clients that I've worked with over time, they're almost asking for diet breaks in a normal dieting phase. And I'm like, we don't need one yet, right? Whereas I really only use them with contest prep clients or a very, very long drawn out diet. So I like the way that you're explaining this because ultimately with the balance of the diet break weeks and the, low weeks, right? It all kind of balances out, but you're speeding it up faster. And I think the diet breaks really, really help with like the cortisol aspect of things and the mental
Yes.
aspect of things 100%. Because when you get somebody in like a 16-week cut, even though that's not crazy, that's pretty normal, 12 to 16
Mhm.
weeks, depending on the fat loss. The longer it happens, the more likely they are to be like, oh, well, my vacation's coming up. Can I have a diet break? I'm not giving you a diet break on a cruise. You know what I mean? Where you have like
Right.
all you can eat access. So it's like being very mindful of that. So I like this so far. Now, obviously, you mentioned only 15 minutes of cardio. Is that like steady state? Miss?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I like steady state about 120 beats per minute
Okay.
because you're going to burn a decent amount of calories if you're going 15 minutes at 120 heart rate for
Yeah.
most people. Like I said, so there's an extra 150 calories or so there that someone's going to burn if they're hoofing. So it just helps, it's good for heart health anyway. So I'm a big believer in cardio. It's a good time to catch up. It's a good time to walk and check your phone if you need to do it that way, or just listen to podcasts. I don't really care. But I like to put that in so I can also pull it back out. And I can let someone eat 1,200 calories instead of 1,100, right? If they're doing some cardio to help with that fat loss. But that's a snapshot of the first 3 weeks. So if a guy's lost 8 pounds the first 2 weeks, he's probably going to drop another couple pounds during the diet break. Now he's down 10. Now you're going to go into one more cycle like that. So now we're right back to rapid fat loss for 2 weeks. Throw the cardio back in, drop those 50 carbs a day back out, push as hard as you can for 2 more weeks, and then you're going to do one more diet break, and then you're done. So, like I said, that's what I did to go from 225, 227-ish range, all the way down to 205. And I did it in 2 cycles like that. But I found, like I said earlier, 2 weeks of hard dieting, one diet break is much better than 3 weeks of hard dieting and then one diet break. Like you don't, and 2 cycles through of this is good. You don't want to keep going through this. Like you just don't. I haven't seen any negative effects to it, but if you did, I would like to see the diet break a lot higher from a calorie standpoint. So not more than 50 carbs a day, probably added like 100 carbs a day, which you're still not going to gain fat on. People freak out because they hear 100 carbs, but you are only eating 1,200 calories. So like you're only going to add 400 calories in from carbs, and you're probably going to keep dropping. So if someone wanted to extend it out, they could. Just know that your diet breaks they need to be up there really, really well.
So what about the fear for, muscle loss hypothetically, right? I mean, I feel like it's so fast, but what are we doing to prevent that?
Yeah. So here's the thing: when you've got enough fat on your body to use as fuel, unless you're very lean to get on stage, your body's going to use that for cardio. It's going to use that as fuel because you're low calorie. You just don't have to worry about that. It's when someone's really lean, that's when muscle loss happens. So, like in a contest prep, especially with natural individuals who aren't assisted or who aren't on hormone therapy or whatever, you see when you watch someone's lean mass, it tanks at the very, very end of a contest prep when they get really close to stage lean. That's when you might see 5 or 6 pounds of muscle drop off of somebody. But when someone's in the off season and they're doing a mini cut, you're probably not going to see you'll probably see zero muscle loss like in a phase like this. So the things that we're doing with the diet breaks, with dropping cortisol, like all those things, that helps prevent and not doing it too much and too often.
So tell me how you're taking them out of this. Because I'm sure that some of your, well, maybe, I don't know, maybe not, because I'm sure this is like your thing and you've probably tested it with clients that are very responsible. But I'm just
Yeah.
thinking that someone might be like, oh, I'm addicted. Let's do another cycle, right? I know you mentioned like 3 could be the max, but how do you basically walk your client through, okay, listen, like we can't keep going. This is going to be detrimental. And here's how we maintain that weight loss.
Yeah. So there's other ways to keep people going, right? But you almost always have to explain to the client, if you do low calories for too long, essentially your metabolism, you see metabolic adaptation. Your body starts to adapt to lower calories over time. And I think we've all been through it ourselves. We're like, you know what? this is working great. I don't want to gain weight. I'm going to stay low calorie. And that's a misconception that I wrote about in one of my books. The very first book was like, we can't stay low calorie. We can't stay high cardio to try and stay lean, right? Because it does the opposite. And you know that, we've all been there and done that. So I always educate my people, hey, if you stick to your plan very closely, I need to reverse diet you and start adding food in each week. If you stick to it like glue, there's still a chance that you're going to keep dropping body fat because that happens. And it's kind of like a diet break, right? So what we see when you start to reverse diet someone back up, if they're strict, cortisol drops, you drop a little bit of water, thyroid hormone picks up because your body's not making as much cortisol. So then your thyroid speeds up, you're adding food, your metabolic capacity starts to increase. You'll actually feel more hungry on a reverse diet than you will the rapid fat loss phases.
Every time.
Every time. Like it's the hardest part. It's the hardest thing, right?
Yes, every time.
Yeah. Yep. Hunger is through the roof. But I see a lot of people, we used to jokingly call it the unicorn approach to dieting, how to add food and drop weight. And it's because people need to stick to it, but you're working with how the body works by dropping cortisol, increasing thyroid hormone, honestly, increasing testosterone. Like those things all happen when you do a reverse diet. So I have to educate my clients on that because a lot of people are scared, females notoriously, because unfortunately, females still to this day, they see it all kinds of places. They think I have to barely eat anything. If I add any kind of food, I'm going to gain weight. If I reverse diet, I'm going to gain weight. So like it will always be something we have to educate people on, where guys are a little bit more comfortable. If we gain a little bit, we're not too worried about it, right? Like most bros are okay. We're gonna fill our t-shirt out.
Devastating, you know what I mean? Because I'm so guilty of this, where like I understand, I'm not afraid, but I think after having been through weight loss resistance, it's like triggering after dieting
Yes.
the scale go up. You know what I mean? So anyway, but I get that. I'm with you because I'd always say that to my female clients. Like after we do like any kind of cut, especially if it's over 15 pounds even, I'm like, hey, give yourself a 2-3 pound wiggle room afterwards, right? Like you may see another drop as we reverse, but like it's gonna catch up. But you know what I mean? So that's helpful to hear. So I want to transition a little bit to just what we're seeing in the industry today. And obviously you're coming in contact with a ton of coaches all the time, but just 2024 landscape of fitness coaching, right? And it could be like things that coaches are doing, it could be a tactic, but what are some trends that you really just hate right now? You're like, I wish that would die.
Yeah, so I'm a very competitive person. I am very, very competitive person. And one thing I don't like, as far as negativity, that's easy I don't think anyone likes negativity, right? Like very few people. I don't like seeing people try and create content to stand out from everyone else on social by going after someone else's approach. And there's a lot of big name people. Listen, I'm friends with some of them. Like, there's a couple people I could text right now. You know them because you've done business with them before. Like they make a living out of going after other people that are putting out content at scale. And then they go make fun of them and say, well, they're saying like this, and this is true. And then they make videos, quote unquote, debunking everyone else. And it's just total negativity. Ben Azadi spoke in Nashville and he brought up a really good quote. He said, amateurs compete or attack, right? I could see the attack part, but he said world class collaborate and work together. And that was a little cool saying that he had mentioned. And I thought about that. And I'm like, I can't stand seeing people just make content because most people are drawn to negativity and toxicity. So it's literally like the calling out of other coaches and trying to bring a whole bunch of toxic people in to watch all your shit go viral. So like it's never going to go away, but it's just at scale now. And it's just like, it makes my stomach sick. Like I will immediately remove someone. Like I will remove them from my social. I don't care. Like, I don't care. Like, I don't want any part of that.
I just think stuff like that heightens your chance of getting put on like a Reddit thread or whatever, and like do it
Yeah.
for whatever. Like, I don't care, but I'm with you. I mean, I see the same thing for us. It's like coaches are talking about other coaches. Like, it's one thing to talk about your methodologies and why they're correct, but you can do things in a way, you can promote your coaching, whatever you're doing, in a way that doesn't put everyone else down or talk negatively about someone else, right? Like, I think when you start to call people out, that's where it gets a little dicey. So I'm with you. Okay, cool. What about, is there anything else that you're seeing that you wish coaches would just stop doing?
I mean, that's really the main thing. I wish there was something that I'm real big on conferences and
Oh yeah.
getting together in community. And I'll tell you what coaches aren't doing that drives me crazy. So I don't know if that answers the question or not, but
Yeah, why
I
not?
see so many coaches out there that do not attend events, especially local events. I put so many conferences on, from the Fat Muscle Academy to Elite Physique University, like all these different events, right? And they're literally low cost. I charge $99 for a ticket and bring in some of the top speakers in the world, Cliff Wilson and Pete Fitchin, and all kinds of people. Jason's there, like people that are local that I know that are coaches, they literally won't attend. And I'm like, what the fuck are you guys doing? Like, you're never going to grow and get better. And I think it's ego. And maybe I need to just pull myself away from even caring, because we have a group of people show up and I love that. And you meet people and you connect and you make all kinds of, honestly, I do business with so many people that I've met at conferences. I mean, you and I are doing this podcast together, right? If it wouldn't have been for these conferences, we're probably never going to be on a podcast
You would still
together,
think I'm
right?
doing ClickFunnels.
Yeah, right. Or not knowing, like, or not even knowing.
You
And you
guys,
can think,
this
yeah,
guy, this guy, after
yeah.
meeting me in Nashville, or sorry, after meeting me at the Hybrid Health Summit, everything I thought was cool. Nope, little did I know. The wheels were turning in John's brain. He was a little skeptical still. Then in Nashville, we're together again. After I speak, I walk up to him and Jason Theobald, and he looks at me and he's like, you're all right. I really thought you were going to talk about some ClickFunnel bullshit. I'm like, I told you that wasn't me. Anyway, so that's the story there. But I agree. So my conference that I do every year is included in my mastermind. But if you are a client of mine that's at like a different level in my course, I do sell
Yeah,
tickets to it. And I literally had two clients ask me, like, what would be the benefit of going? What do you mean? Like, it's
right.
literally a 3-day immersive experience with the top industry leading business owners, coaches. I mean, it's wild to me how many people don't attend events. Like, the networking alone is invaluable. Invaluable.
Yeah,
100%.
I agree 100%. And the other thing too is as people get more successful in this, the lonelier it gets. And I'm not talking about that bullshit, it's lonely at the top, but let me explain to some people how lonely this stuff can get sometimes, because usually once you're really starting to make it and you're starting to become successful, you have less and less people around you that understand the lens that you see everything through, right? And you'll have employees, you'll have other people, or you coach clients, and they all need to draw from you. But as you get more successful, you have less and less people that are above you that you get to go interact with, right? So conferences are a great place to meet other people that are like-minded, like you and I, right? Like we can bond over all kinds of stuff about the presentation that you gave, because you get it. And like, for me to be able to talk to someone else that gets it, that's been through that kind of stuff, conferences are a great place for that. So even if you're just starting out as a coach, there's going to be hundreds of other coaches out there that are trying to do the same thing that you want to do. Surround yourself with those type of people. It's just less lonely, because maybe the person out here that's just starting their coaching, maybe your family member doesn't give a shit about physique enhancement. They don't care about coaching clients. They don't care. Like, you don't have a lot of people to talk to about it. Social's fine and all, but it's really nice to go connect and be there in person. And I say it all the time, and then still people, I see a lot of coaches, they just don't show up. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Like, come on, man. But it just is what it is, I guess.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. And it's not the whole, like, it's lonely at the top. I mean, yes, but the higher you scale, the smaller that circle gets. The
Yes.
smaller of a chance it gets that you're going to meet somebody like-minded. I literally have this conversation with my friends so frequently. I'm like, God, like, I have friends that are really far past me, and I have friends that haven't quite hit the level that I'm at yet. But it's hard to find people that are on the same level, 100%. And I don't mean level in terms of just like money. It's just like, the higher you climb in business, it's like you quickly find out who your friends are and who are not. Because I know in my first year of business, I cut a lot of people out of my life. right? They were there when I hated my job and everything sucked. And the second things didn't suck, they were not the same, you know?
Yeah.
And I think it's important to talk about that too. Like you truly are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Like, and if you're the smartest in the room all the time, you need a different room,
Yeah. It's
you know?
draining. It can be draining. Very
Absolutely.
lonely. Very
Yeah.
lonely.
So moving into a few questions for you to kind of wrap this up with entrepreneurship, you have definitely done all of the things, right? And so I really want to chat with you on how to transition from in person to online, like what you would advise people to do today. And you can give whatever strategies you want, but I loved your chat about building the ecosystem and some
Yeah.
tips that you gave. And I know a lot of in-person trainers are really struggling with that transition.
Yeah. So the number one thing I tell people, you've got to look the part. And I'm not talking about like we've seen one-on-one trainers in the gym. They're a little pudgy. They don't even look like they work out. Like what we don't know is those people are trying. Like they're in their journey. But the number one thing that you're going to do, if you're going to be the billboard for your business, especially you're going to transition to online coaching, social media is a presence. So it's not just the people that you see in person. You have got to look the part. So you don't have to look like a world-class bodybuilder, but you need to be a walking billboard for whatever it is you're trying to sell other people, which is physique enhancement. Maybe you're a guy that went from, 350 pounds down to 250 and you're healthy now. You're a walking billboard for that. And you're looking for other clients that are like that. You're not looking for clients to put on stage because you don't know anything about that. So you've got to be the walking billboard for that when you transition over, because that's literally what you're going to represent all over your social media. And if you don't like social media, don't try and become an online coach, because guess what? That's how you're going to tell the world about your clients, and yourself mainly is what's going to drive clients to you. I know for everybody, when they're first starting out, most of the time, you're not just going to get clients hitting you up. You're going to have your friends that follow you on social, the people you went to high school with, family, whoever. They're going to be like, holy crap, like you dropped 80 pounds. Can you help me? Boom. That's your first thing. You got a DM, you've got a message, an email, a text, whatever it is, but you've got to be the walking billboard example. And we could do a whole podcast, and we kind of just did on my podcast, but about how to get those clients and how to sell them, and not in a sleazy way, but how to sell yourself. But to me, it all starts with that. And you've got to utilize social media. You've got to show people what you're doing day
And
in,
it's
day out.
Yep. And it's not even always about the look too. It's like there are so many coaches that I come across that are just such hypocrite, like they're hypocritical in the way that they live day to day, right? So, if you're the business owner that is telling your clients to get the steps in, drink the water, but you've got, 2,000 steps for the day and your cortisol is either flatline or whatever, like that's also not helpful, right? So I think it's internal health too. Like you have to take care of yourself. But I agree with you. And I know there's so many people out there, especially women that are probably going to hear this and think like, well, John just told me I'm not ready. It's like, look, you don't have to have abs. Okay. You don't have to look shredded, but like if somebody, in my opinion, sees you and wouldn't think like, I want to look like that girl or I want to look at that person, right? Again, doesn't mean you have to be jacked or whatever, but I do think that your body truly is a billboard for your business. I do think that, yes.
Yeah, I've got one of our coaches here on Fat Muscle Project, and we've got a whole slew of, we got like 25 coaches. Her name's Allison Hager, and she used to be very heavy and very obese. And she looks great now. She's not shredded with abs. She is beautiful and she looks great. And she's got a whole host of people that hire her that just want to be able to be in a size 6, for example. They want to be out of a size 12 into a 6. They want to be able to wear a pair of leggings and a shirt to the gym and not worry about everything that comes along with being out of shape wearing that stuff, right? They're looking for confidence. We all have our own niche, right? You've just got to, and it all starts with us. Like it all starts with us. And that's what I wish people would just pay attention to, that and not worry about what I'm doing to coach people, what you're doing to coach people, what Jason Theobald is doing to coach people. None of that matters. It's all right in front of us. Like it's us. It's a manifestation of what we show people.
Because I'm living proof. Like I remember whenever I started, I mean, obviously you saw my presentation from Jason, but like gaining
Yeah.
45 pounds in 90 days was probably the scariest thing that ever happened to me. I mean, in terms of health, I truly was like, oh my God, as somebody who is a coach, who's always been relatively lean or in shape, I mean, I had never seen my body like that. And I truly thought my business was going to crash. And so if you're listening to this and you might be going through something, I think the best thing you can do is be vulnerable and open, right? So people
Mhm.
didn't see me gain weight and think Taeler just doesn't care anymore. They were seeing my labs, they were listening to my story, and that got me more clients, right? So
Yep.
those of you that might be doing like more of the food freedom stuff or intuitive eating, like again, that type of lifestyle typically doesn't come with being shredded and jacked. But again, just making healthy choices. All you have to be is 2 to 3 steps ahead of your ideal client. So again, I don't want anyone to listen to this and be like, what the hell, body positivity? Because like that's not what we're saying, right? But you
Right.
have to be a healthy individual. And we're not just talking about aesthetics, but if we're running a health coaching, I mean, I couldn't coach business if I had 0 clients, right? Like
Right.
that would make no sense. So I think just understanding that. So let's say we're talking to a business owner who is really struggling. Like they've been trying, they don't know why they can't get clients, they're doing all the right things. Like, what would you either assess or look at to help them get clients?
Well, outside of, like I said, being a walking billboard, I notice people don't story tell enough. So like, and here's the thing, I hate social media more than probably anybody out there, but I use it as a tool. And what I do is I constantly story tell. And what I did organically back before Instagram and when there really was just Facebook in general, I would story tell my own story. So let me give our listeners an example. All you have to do is literally storytell with the stuff you're doing as you're progressing. Because if you don't have clients or you've got one client and you can't figure out how to scale, the first thing you have to do is to get eyeballs on you. Storytell and show people what you're doing. And don't make the posts about here, let's see how much attention I can get on myself. Let's see how much I can educate Sally and Jennifer who are out there who need to lose 30 pounds. Let me storytell and show this instead of trying to make a post to glorify myself. So just story tell, hey, I lost 3 pounds my first week and 2 pounds this week. Here's the diet I've been doing, and I've been packing my food just like this, and it's helped so much. Story tell. That's all you have to do. And people don't do that enough because they use social as a way to get attention on themselves. All you have to do is look at your social and your posts and just say, is this helping someone? Or is this about how much light can I shine on myself? And by the way, I struggle with that because when I'm speaking and I got a picture of me speaking in front of a crowd, I want to post that because I want to be like, I'm so proud I just spoke at the Hybrid Health Summit. And I'm like, that's not helping anybody. All it is just like it's me, it's ego, right? So like I tried to attach some kind of a message to that, be like, I got to speak at the Hybrid Health Summit, and here's a couple tips that I had on, how to raise your testosterone, whatever. So if people would do that, that's a huge difference maker. But the number one thing I can tell people is if you have a client, I don't, if it's one client, two clients, three, but one, all you have to do is you have to go so far above and beyond for that current client that they tell all their friends about you. And if you're not working that hard for that client, you're never going to scale a business. So word of mouth is always the beginning. So if I'm working with Sally, I am going to spend all my time on Sally. If Sally doesn't know how to shop for food, guess what? I'm gonna send her a video. I'm gonna go to the store and I'm gonna literally send her a video because people are gonna be like, well, I don't want to spend time doing that. You got one fucking client. Like you better spend the time doing that shit. Send a bunch of videos and be like, Sally, here's the foods I recommend you get. Get these and start with these. Whatever it takes. Because guess what? When Sally loses 20 pounds, all of her friends are like, oh my God, how did you lose 20 pounds? She's like, let me tell you about John. John sent me videos from the freaking store. He emailed me back at 11 o'clock at night when I had a question because I had to go out and eat after the game and I didn't know what to do. Go above and beyond for those clients. Are going to tell everybody about you. That's the thing. People, they don't outwork. And John Gorman, to this day, I will outwork people doing that still to this day with my clients because that's how you keep clients coming back as well.
That's also how you stay ahead. Like, people always ask me, how do you get ahead? It's not, I could give you the best strategies, but if you can't outwork your competition, it doesn't matter. Like if you can't show up for you every damn day, it doesn't matter. And to your point, the amount of coaches I hear that are, oh, I don't have time. I'm like, you have 5 clients. What do you mean? Like,
No
what do you
shit.
mean you don't
They're
have
lazy.
time? Yeah, exactly. And it's like, if you're trying to truly create not only financial freedom, but time freedom and just not have the 9 to 5 lifestyle, do you think it's going to be handed to you? Absolutely not. It's going to be the hardest thing you've ever worked for in your entire life. And it's going to be
Mhm.
hard continuously. I used to think that once I hit like my first 6 figures, I was like, man, that's it. I've made it. And then I did. And
Yeah.
I was like, I still work a shit ton. I got a ways to go, right? And it's addicting, not the money, but the impact gets really addicting because you start to see with more income, there's more possibilities for what you can do and create and all of that, right? So I agree 100%. And to circle back on the storytelling, you are literally speaking to my heart because people might hear that and say, "Oh, well, Taeler was a journalist." It's like, yes, I was. However, your content has to speak to one singular person. So I
Yeah.
like to use the me, you, we method in like a caption. So me, meaning your actual client, the person who's reading it. You have to first connect the dots to that person, make them feel targeted. And then you is literally you. How does this relate to you? That could be 2 sentences on something you heard at the gym, what a client said, what you did, what you used to do, just a story to connect the pain point to that. And then we is how you, me together equals a solution. And if you follow that cadence, you're going to crush it. But storytelling is not Dear Diary. Storytelling is just making sure it's not how to get protein. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Want to work with me?
Yeah.
That's not going to help, right? So again, understanding that vague gets vague, but that's what I see. Like I edit content every damn day for my clients, and that's not it, right? Now it's I took Sally to the grocery store and here's what we bought together. Whoa. John's taking his clients grocery shopping, like that's going to drive traction. So I agree 100%. What would you say for this like just out 6 figure, whatever, established coach? They're really looking to kind of get to that next level. What advice would you give for them? I know there's a lot of variables, but where do you see, I guess, mistakes that people might be making at that level?
Yeah, to get from 6 to 7 figures, maybe
Yeah,
as an example.
yeah.
So, hopefully they put the time in because that's the number one thing. So, in my presentation, when I talked about how to organically get to 7 figures, I spent 7 years as a diet coach working with people online, answering questions, DMs, helping people, doing everything I could at scale for 7 years before I added my next business to my ecosystem. So coaching was always the base of our ecosystem, right? So then you add something outside the ecosystem that your clients, your ecosystem will go pay for. So, I wrote books, I started conferences, I did those, but the number one thing that really moved the needle for me was starting a supplement company, starting Fat Muscle Project. And that in and of itself is a 7 figure business, right? So it's like I wasn't ready to start that back in 2012. I wanted to. Everyone thinks they want to. But if you're working with, what I would call full-time clients, maybe it's 50 check-ins a day, right? Or 50 clients, right? Current clients and you've done that for years and years and years, if you've done a good job by everybody, even if they're not still working for you, those clients from 5 or 6 years ago, if you've done right by them, they're going to come back and support the next thing. And a supplement company to me is perfect. And it's why I've become part of my manufacturing process with my manufacturer. I actually help coaches start their own line with smaller minimums so they're not spending tens and tens and 6 figures starting a supplement company. I actually help them start with protein and maybe a pre-workout or a multi. And that to me is if someone's really wanting to move the needle, making it 6 figures in coaching is one thing. Making it well into the 6 figures just with coaching, if you don't have a team or anything like that, to me, a supplement company is probably the best bet because you need supplements for your clients anyway. Why not make money off of your own products and you control what's in the product? So it's been a labor of love for me. It's my number one favorite business right now. I'll always love coaching, but the supplement industry is awesome because I get to control that. I get to come out with what flavors I want, and my clients and customers get excited about it, and I make them part of our events. Like the sky is literally the limit with a supplement company.
What would you say is one of the most valuable pieces of advice that is just kind of in the back of your head where if you're having a hard day or, business just feels hard one day, right? Like, what do you come back to? What's something you can leave us with?
Mm. I guess one of the things I can say to the listeners is sometimes if you have imposter syndrome, self-doubt, and by the way, that's at scale these days because when you look on social, you see all the business coaches, you see freaking Gary Vee out there. Nice guy, by the way. Met him a few times. Like you see all these different people, right? And I actually don't watch any of that shit because it gives me anxiety because it makes me feel like I'm not doing enough. And then I look around, I'm like, yeah, I'm doing a lot of shit actually. So like I tune that out, but imposter syndrome is real for people listening because you see it online. And my mentor hit me, and I'll give this example to kind of end the show. In 2007, I was managing a gym and I was brand new and I had personal trained some clients, but I knew my way around a gym. And all of a sudden, we were going to do a ribbon cutting, right, for the Chamber of Commerce. And I'm brand new, 30-year-old John Gorman. And they all got there, and the owner looked at me and he said, "Hey, they want a tour of the gym. They want you to walk them through and like explain who we are as a business." And my face went white because I was not prepared. And I literally had 30 seconds to get ready to take this group of, whatever, 20 people of people I didn't know dressed in suits. And here I am from a trailer park, right? Like grew up, horse shit. And I got all these quote unquote important people in front of me. And my mentor to this day is still my mentor, Monty Pierce. He looked at me and he said, "Take a deep breath. Remember, you're the expert in here. You know this gym frontwards, backwards. You know our business frontwards, backwards. They don't know anything about fitness. They don't know what the hell a chest press machine is. They don't know what diet is. You are there in their eyes. They hold you up here. You're the expert." So for our listeners, what I want people to remember is no matter what you see, remember to your clients and the people that you're serving and who are paying you money, you are their expert. Just remember that. So like have confidence when you go into the things that you're doing, the things that you maybe want to launch. You're the expert for your clients. Very rarely are you ever going to have a client that knows more about what you're doing. If so, then they're not going to be a client for long. So just remember that and take that with you if you ever feel that imposter syndrome sink in.
No, I love that. I agree. And I say it all the time. Like, if there's anyone that ever makes you have self-doubt or stress out, like unfollow or mute the person. I think a lot of
Mhm.
us in the coaching space, where we're so obsessed with scaling, we're so obsessed with growing, and all of that's great. I love that. But we're getting too much information from too many different places. And so we're second guessing ourselves. And especially those of you
Yes.
that have a mentor, if you have a mentor, unfollow other business coaches. Like, you're just going to feel like you have conflicting information. Not to say that your mentor is, knows everything, because they don't. I don't, you don't, we don't. But I'm not having a mentor and having the same person for almost 3 years now. I'm not looking anywhere else for any information, because it's going to create self-doubt or just friction in the process. So I agree with that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, if you guys are wanting to connect with John, buy supplements, learn more, I've got his stuff linked in the show notes, and I appreciate you hanging out with us today.
Yeah, this was a blast. I can't wait to do it again soon. Thank you.
Awesome. You are welcome.